So thank you all for attending. I, as you know, am Neal Schindler. I'm the Director of Jewish Family Services, and we are very pleased today to be joined by Rachel Raz, the executive producer of Space Torah. She's also a consultant, a speaker, and an educator. Rachel works at the Shoolman Graduate School of Jewish Education of Hebrew College in Newton, Massachusetts, where she's the director of the Early Childhood Institute and the chair of the annual Jewish Education Conference. In addition, she directs the Boston-Haifa Early Childhood Educators Connection. Rachel also serves on the Israeli-American Council Advisory Committee of KESHET, is a board member of UMass Amherst Hillel, and wrote the children's books ABC Israel and The Colors of Israel. Rachel has a BA from Bar-Ilan University and an MJED, a Master of Jewish Education from Hebrew College. So now I will turn things over to Rachel. She has a presentation to start us off, and then we'll move to questions after that. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I know it's the middle of the day for you, so lunchtime. As Neal shared, I'm a Jewish educator by profession, and this is my first film. And this film definitely took me on a very, very special journey. I did prepare a slideshow to share with you some more information about the journey and about the film. And I included some material that didn't make it into the film. So hopefully it will be exciting for you. Did all of you had a chance to see the film? Excellent, yeah. So I'm gonna do a share screen and share with you. Can you see this? Excellent. So in 2016, a colleague of mine at work told me that a Jewish astronaut is coming to give a lecture at Hebrew College. And I said, wow, a Jewish astronaut, never met one, never heard one. I didn't know anything about Jeff, but I said, this probably will be something interesting. So this is here on the left, Jeff Hoffman in the lecture at Hebrew College. And he started sharing with us that he participated on 5 space missions, that he fixed the Hubble telescope, and here he is on fixing the outside in space. And he started sharing that his first flight actually took place during Pesach, and we are getting ready for Pesach, and he wanted to take with him matzot, and he was denied to take matzot because, as we know, matzot, all the crumbs are not going to fall on the ground. They're going to fly all over and get into every place. So instead of that, they made for him a special matzah for space, which is more like tortilla. It's also, and this is one of his fellow astronauts, and this flight in 1985. And so this was Pesach in space. And then he also shared with us that on every one of his of his 5 flights, he took with him mezuzot. And of course, you can't put a mezuzah outside the space shuttle. So he, like everything else you do in and in every one of his flights, he took different mezuzot with him. A Museum of Science. There's another one at Congregation Shara Shalom. This is his community in Houston. And then he just said, and I took a Torah in 1996. Like it's something very casual that we do, we take Torah to space, we take mezuzah to space. And I was sitting there the entire time thinking to myself, one, how come I don't know about this person, this guy? It's a phenomenal story. It's a positive story. It's a good story. Why don't we know about him? And the second thing, because I'm a Jewish educator, I was thinking how much I want to use his story in education, to share it with students, to develop their pride, to work with educators, to teach them about what are the things that we will take with us when we travel, not just to space, but when we travel to different places, what are the things that are important for us? And so in the end of this, and I was Googling like everybody to see if I can find some of this original footage that he shared with us, and I couldn't find anything. So I reached out to him in the end of this lecture, and I said to him, where can I find this footage? And he said, it's not available anywhere. It's on my computer. And I said to him, what do you mean on your computer? It was 20 years after. And he said, yeah, I was busy. He's a humble, busy guy, was doing his things with NASA. And I don't know if it was the Israeli chutzpah in me or what it was, or I knew that I need to do something about it. So I asked him if he's open to make a documentary film. And again, I never made a film in my life. And he was very nice and he said, sure, if it's done professionally. And he probably tried to dismiss me because what do I know, the director of the early childhood, making a film. But he gave me his card, I gave him my card, and we left. And I came home and I said, I must do something about it. I can't, this is an amazing story. Again, positive story, beginning, middle, end. He is still active professor at MIT. He is very active now with Mars exploration. And I said, I must make sure that we share this story. So I did lots of homework and I asked who knows somebody that know how to make film, and through my congregation and somebody connected me to somebody. And then luckily I was connected to Rob Cooper, our director that has been in the field for over 30 years. And he loved this story and he said, I would love to work with you. And another thing that came up in my mind at this specific lecture was I'm an Israeli and I know about Ilan Ramon, the Israeli astronaut, and everybody was following him, and the pride that we had as a country, and Jews and Israeli, everybody together. And I say, how come we don't know about Jeff? He has this amazing story over 5 space missions. On each one of his flights, he did some wonderful Jewish, he took with him rituals and did some things. And how come we don't know about him? Ilan Ramon, the Israeli astronaut, also took a Torah, which I thought until that day when I met Jeff, that was the first Torah in space. And then I realized that Jeff took the first Torah in 1996, actually also on Space Shuttle Columbia, on the same space shuttle that Ilan Ramon later on in 2003 took this Torah from the Holocaust. So for me, all of these things kind of came together, and here this astronaut with all of this pride and positivity, and I start working to make the film. So we opened the Space Torah Project, and I'm not good in fundraising, and I started doing fundraising. I'm very good with research, so I found the Rabbi, I found other connections, and I start asking him different questions. This is in his office at MIT. I start asking questions about his childhood, and I found the story about his father and the telescope going to the open field and Sputnik. And I asked him about which teacher influenced him. And I found it fascinating that the teacher, it's not a science teacher, it's a 3rd grade teacher that really noticed him and what he's interested in. And so on, we continue. And here we did a recording at the Museum of Science in Boston, that they closed it for us after hour, and we recorded the film. And here we are, we have the film. As of yesterday, it was accepted to 15 film festivals. And I'm very excited to be here, part of that. And it won the best short film last night at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. And so there's lots of pride. And I do have more information, but I also want to give you the opportunity to ask me questions before I continue.
Yeah, and I would say if folks want to unmute themselves, you're welcome to do that and ask a question. You're also welcome to put a question in chat if you'd prefer. Okay, well, maybe none so far, but you can always ask in the middle, right? If something occurs to you. All right.
So you want me to share some more?
If you wouldn't mind, and then, yeah, in a little bit, I have some questions of my own I prepared, but yes, if you wouldn't mind a little more, that'd be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we worked together for 5 years, and we created I found lots of different materials. So this is me visiting the congregation Or Ami in Houston, and this is the small little Torah. A little anecdote, actually, the Rimonim that has the shape of the Space Shuttle Columbia weren't there at the flight. This was, they were dedicated on the 20th anniversary of that flight, which was 5 years ago. So when you see it in the film, it actually, the Rimonim weren't there. Another interesting thing that I found, actually, that he sent a fax to his congregation from space. and I didn't know that you can send the fax from space. But this is when we got together with the rabbi. We found Shaul Osachi after 15 years, and he shared with us this fax. Does any one of you maybe want to read it? I think you will find it interesting.
Read it aloud, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read it. Okay, the following fax was received from Or Hadash member Dr. Jeff Hoffman from the Shuttle Columbia, February 28, 1996, 13:09 p.m. To Shaul and the Or Hadash Chaverim. It's wonderful so many of you could come down to Florida and share in the excitement of my shuttle launch. Our Torah is in orbit. It's a little hard keeping track of time up here, but I think I can figure out when it will be Shabbat. On that day, I will unpack our Torah, unroll it, say the prayer for studying Torah, and read the first part of Bereshit. I brought along a yad to help. If possible, I will do this when we pass over Israel, but this will be subject to weather constraints. Surprisingly, the weather over Israel these last few days has been completely cloudy, and I haven't seen it at all. We will try lighting candles as part of our combustion experimentation, but I can't guarantee this will be done at sunset, although there's a better chance here than you might think, since the sun sets every 90 minutes. Don't worry about the impact of our problems with the tethered satellite on my morale or that of my roommates. It took 40 years to get from Egypt to Israel, and sometimes the road to progress and the future is harder than we anticipate. Someday people will try again, and what we have done will help show the way. By Friday, I will have completed a lifetime total of over 1,000 hours in space, which will be worth a shehechianu. I can't say I look forward to coming home and seeing everyone, because I really love being in space and haven't had enough to feel the need to come home. But I shall be back before too long and look forward to sharing my experiences with all of you. Shalom, Jeff.
So this is something that even Jeff forgot that he sent. And when we met with the rabbi, he brought it with him. And it was just like mind blowing that, we would have lost, this kind of a document, which is so wonderful. And on the other side, he wrote, after he read from the Torah, I read the Torah this evening at the right time, Shabbat morning in Jerusalem, evening in Houston. I have it on TV to show you folks back home. Tell them thanks for making it possible to carry the Torah aboard. Scott and I share the same bunk, so I leave the little mezuzah Velcro to the door. So apparently they share the same bunk, and every time after he woke up, he used to take it and until his next shift to sleep. And one day he forgot. And the other astronaut, Scott Orwitz, actually told him, Jeff, very nice touch. You put a mezuzah. And then he realized that he also was Jewish. So they decided to keep it up. So another thing that actually came from all of this exploration, I am a stamp collector. And I reached out to the Israeli Postal Services, and we created a limited edition of 200 of these commemorative stamps as part of our fundraising effort. And so we have these beautiful stamps and coming in this beautiful sleeve. So it's also, we try to remember, create more buzz around this history and allow collectors and people that want to have it to have a piece of this history also. We found also that on his first flight, after I met his first rabbi, he wrote a special Shehecheyanu prayer, and it also read it in space. Here it is, read on the second day of mission STS-51 in 1985, which is the same flight of Passover, of Pesach. This is more of the filming. And I will end with that. I want to really give you time for a question. And I also want to add, again, I put in the chat box registration on Monday, we're going to hold a Q&A with Jeff. So if you want to meet him and ask him questions, register, you can copy this address and join us on Monday night.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's always fun to be able to look behind the scenes and see some of the things that not everyone would know just from watching the film. So I appreciate that very much. I think you've already mentioned what it was about the project that interested you, that drew you to it. But I'm curious, if you don't mind talking about it, how do you think the project, the messages or the aspects of it that drew you, how do those relate to your own sense of Jewish identity and values that are important to you?
So there were several things there that were very important for me. And I also, when I worked with Rob Cooper, the director, I told him this must need to be in the film. Because I think that if somebody else would have done this film, it would be very different than because of me, it became such a different film. One of them that was important for me is parents' involvement. So when he told me that his father took him to the planetarium and the open field, I wanted to send a message to all parents out there. Spend time with your kids, and it doesn't need to be the planetarium, but whatever you're fascinated about. So family values were very important. The second thing is when asking about an educator, for me, it's important to send a message to every educator around the world to listen to the kids and not to the curriculum. Because very often it's like we have the agenda that we need to cover material instead of uncover and helping the kids to learn and grow. So that was another thing that it's very important for me. The other thing is the role of the rabbi or the spiritual leader. It wasn't Jeff's idea to take Jewish object to space. It was his rabbi that says to him, do you want to take something? And said, makes sense. And then when his rabbi said to him, take a Torah, and he said, no, it's too big. It was the rabbi idea. So something to think that we are on a lifelong journey and we're still growing and developing and evolving. And I think even Jeff, with the process with me for 5 years, became now the speaker for the Jewish people that he didn't intend to be. He did it very privately. So the role of the rabbis and the journey that we are on, and not to feel that even if we're working in a religious school or with other people, that everything needs to be by bar mitzvah, everything needs to be by the age of 20. This is a wonderful journey. The other values that it was important for me to create pride in Judaism. I'm a very, very proud Jew. There are so many wonderful and gifts that Judaism brought to the world, and I want people to follow it, not because we have to or because of continuity, but because there's lots of wisdom that if we understand it and we learn it, it can enrich our life. And I was thinking that if they see somebody like Jeff Hoffman, an astronaut, choosing to bring his Judaism, this part of his identity with him, they might ask, what is it in that drew him to bring the Torah? What's in the Torah that he thought is worthwhile of bringing? And also when he mentioned in this sentence that every object that they take to space, it's to make the object special. Because now they're coming back home, they said, this object went to space. But in the case of the Torah, he said, we're bringing humanity to space. We're bringing our value. Wherever we go, we are pioneers. And he was a pioneer Jew in space. We're bringing our values with us, that they are very important. And the other thing that for me, it's the idea of the sky is not the limit. It's like, dream big, whatever you want to do. And with him, when he was thinking about space or the sky, that was a time that he couldn't be an astronaut. But later on, things change and there's opportunity. So it's to dream or get closer to it. So I want to encourage everyone, whatever their dream is, it can be an artist, it can be a baker, it can be to be an educator, to be a parent, whatever it is, not to give up on your dream and try to work and achieve them. So all of these things, in some way, these are my values. Until I met Jeff, it was mostly like I think growing up in Israel, Benjamin Zev Herzl, when he said, if you will it, it's not a dream, like Im tirtzu en zo agada. So it's always the mindset that we can do anything. And with Jeff, it was seeing it through space. And for me with the film, I wanted to do it and I made it. I'm not a filmmaker, now I am. But until then I wasn't. So these are some of the values and messages that many of them are rooted within our Jewish tradition. That was for me important to bring. And one last thing is joy. You know, one big thing in Judaism is joy. We forget about it. On every holiday, we have a samachta bechagecha, you will rejoice in your holiday, and we forget about it. So for me, the idea that this is something joyful, hopeful, positive was very important also.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts so much. And I mentioned to Rachel before we began formally the Q&A that I've already heard feedback from audience members that they so appreciate the festival ending with Space Torah and Breaking Bread because they are such joyful and hopeful films. And so that really came through what you're talking about. So I have a question that's as much, I think, my question as one that I think might be helpful for others to hear the answer to.
Kind of when she's talking here, do you mind if I ask, like, how long from beginning to end, from when you first heard about this and thought, I would like to make a film, and I still can't get over that you had never made a film before. It is so beautiful and so well done. But how long did it take from that first kernel of thought to actually having a film?
Longer than I want to admit. I met Jeff, it was January 2016. And I came home and I said, I must do something about it. And my husband, I have to say, I need to give him a lot of credit, and said, so do it. And okay, you need the first money in, we will put it in, just do it. And so we started that time. It took me probably like 2 months to find the producer, the director, again, with like 30 years of experience in documentary film. So he knew what he's doing, and that's why you have this beautiful film, also thanks to him and the team that he put together. Rob is excellent. And but also fundraising, because it took time to gain people trust to give fund. And I have to say that we still didn't finish to cover the film. And I actually volunteer my time to do that. But we wanted to make sure that it's out there, and we're starting to roll it out. And hopefully now by running programs, we can get some of the money in to cover some of these expenses. It took some time. So when I first met with Rob Cooper, the director, he told me it's going to take 2 years. And I said to him, 2 years? What do you mean 2 years? Why can't we do it in 6 months? You know, you just take a camera and you do it. He said, no, this is not how it works. And I said, 2 years? Who knows where I'll be in 2 years? You know, how, you know, it seems too much for me. And here we are about 4.5 years, almost 5. And, but it took time because we didn't know exactly what the film would look like. The only thing that we knew, that we had the original footage from space of him reading the Torah. We had the original footage of space that he was playing with the dreidel. And we knew Jeff. We didn't know at that first meeting, I didn't know anything about his father and the planetarium. At that meeting, I didn't know anything about his teacher. He didn't talk about her in his original film. He spoke about the Torah, but I had to locate the rabbi and the community and find more and more and more information. And then I actually met Jana Kaplan, the woman that you see in the film. Somebody told me that she's a professor at Brenda, she's training astronaut. I went and I met with her. So it took time, this uncovering and investigation and finding materials, and then to book the first filming at the Museum of Science, and then another filming in Jeff's house. And luckily, just before COVID, the shutdown, we did our last filming in Houston, a week before the shutdown. And actually, the pandemic helped us very much, because the musician and the editors, they were all out of lots of other jobs, because the industry kind of froze, and they were like, sure, I'm going to sit and write the music for this film. And so we are very thankful for COVID for locking them in their houses and forcing them to finish the film. And we finished in August. So it's been 4.5 years of a wonderful journey and uncovering and discovering different things.
Wow.
Wow.
Are you going to make another film?
So I actually just submitted a grant proposal to do a variation of the film for young children. like from 3 to 8, 9-year-old, because Jeff is a wonderful educator. And recently we held an event when we had 6-year-olds kids also, and they asked him questions. The way he answered them, I said, I need to make a variation for young children and maybe include some animation. So if we will get the grant, so this will be the next project. Also, the film itself wasn't just the only project. We call it the Space Torah Project. The Space Torah is a part of the big project. The idea is to document some of the material that I shared with you here today, to develop some curriculum. I'm in touch with the Ministry of Education in Israel and Ministry of Diaspora to think about how to create it as an educational tool for Foundation of Jewish Camp and other organizations with youth and with children. So this is a little bit some of the thought behind it, to take it and to really use it in a way that will inspire people around the world.
And in your making of this film, how many more Jewish astronauts did you find?
There are actually more than we thought of. I don't remember. It's over 10, I think. Maybe even more. I don't remember last time.
A million.
Yeah, there's even more than that. There is even more. There is actually the first one was Russian, a cosmonaut, but he didn't identify himself as a Jew. And then the first American Jewish astronaut was actually Judy Resnick. She was before Jeff. And Jeff is the first male American Jewish astronaut, the third one.
Well, it's quite a distinction, and clearly an elite group. I appreciate those questions so much, and I was going to ask why a short rather than a full-length documentary, but I get the sense that it was enough work and time just to make a film of this length, and for the scope to be even larger might have seemed too much. But I don't know if I'm right.
So that's actually a great question. It's a great question. There are two reasons why. One, when I met Rob Cooper originally, we looked at 3 different scenarios for a film. If we just take some of the original footage and create something like 10, 15 minutes, we can document it, make sure that we secure it, and done. The other one was what we ended creating, and with the intention that it will be great for educational programming. So then you can have an hour and a half, you can give a pre-film, we can watch it together, and there can be a discussion. So that was a very good length for that. And this is what I've been doing all over the world right now, doing sessions with the film together. The 1 hour length that I was thinking of was to think, either bring some other stories about other Jewish astronauts, or actually my thinking was to bring other people from different faiths and thinking about their journey and what they took with them and why, and to make it in some way also more universal, because there are several directions to go with that. And to make it more universal about our journey as human beings, and what do we take with us, what's important for us, what are we proud of that we think that it's so important to take with us wherever we are. So there were several scenarios, but we managed to do with this also budget-wise, because it will take much more money and a bigger scope for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I would definitely watch the film you're talking about with astronauts of other faiths, but I think that you're right. The 24-minute length is conducive to a lot of different uses that, particularly with younger viewers who may not have the attention span for an hour-and-a-half documentary. And I say this as someone with a child, so it has nothing to do with the content, it's more the length. And I should also add, we have a PJ Library program here, so if you do put together something that's more for younger kids, please let me know, and we'll present it to our community. Let's see. So I imagine you've done a good number of Q&As and other types of events related to the film. Are there any sort of moments that stand out, favorite moments or stops along the way that you can tell us about?
One of the things that I always enjoy when people are so surprised by this story, that's like, wow, I didn't know about it. And I said, that's why I made this film. And there's lots of appreciation that I see from different communities that really thanking me for rescuing this story and bringing it to our communal memory and part of where we are, which is something that this come a lot in some of the conversation. One of the things that also fascinating different people is how our Judaism need to adapt and evolve. In his case is going to space, but we all go through this now with COVID. Like the festival had to adopt and be virtually, and he had to adopt from the beginning, like with this matzah that I shared with you, that he had to take a different matzah. You can make a kiddush on an open kiddush cup because it all will come into like bubbles and it will float. You know, sunrise, sunset, you saw on these facts, it's every 90 minutes. So what do? Like you pray every 90 minutes, you know, you're going to be very, we really need to rethink, you know, our rituals and tradition and to really think what to do. The other thing that also came up that was very interesting when I compared the Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon again with this like openness and pride, and he felt that he represented Jewish people. And in the case of being an American astronaut, when we are a minority, we're also a country of separation of state and religion. He did it privately for him and for his community. And only now we're making it public. And maybe because he's an American, because we are a minority, we didn't feel comfortable to open it and share it widely. And only now we're doing it. And I don't know, maybe because I'm Israeli and I feel, you know, I think it's important things to do. But this is something that definitely I could see the difference. And also, are we different as Jews because we grew up as a minority or majority in different places, and how it impacts our identity and our understanding and of who we are and what's our role in the world. So this is something that definitely came up. The question is like, you know, why he did it privately and not more openly. And the last question that I had to say or comment that was interesting from children is that several of them asked him if he felt comfortable to be Jewish in NASA. And immediately the question was yes, because I think that in many cases, we kind of teach them to keep their Judaism like in low profile. And I felt sad, I have to say, that we don't teach them to be proud and feel comfortable of how do you talk about it openly and share it and come from a place of strength and what you believe. So I think that we have a lot of work to do with our young, with students, maybe with teachers, with their parents, to really think about, you know, what is it in our tradition that really bring lots of joy and pride and some of our values that are so important. So I think that's something that surprised me, I think, with some of the questions. And the last thing that I have to say, that every time that we do a session with Jeff, the questions of the kids are the most exciting one, because they always ask him, how does it feel to be in space? And then he said, what do you do to blow your nose in space? And how do you sleep? You know, these kind of questions. An adult always ask him, so do you see our world deteriorating and environmental? It's like always this like heavy. So I have to say that it's much more fun to hear the optimistic and sense of wonder kind of questions being with children.
And not overthinking it and not holding back, I think is part of what makes kids so great. Well, most of what I wanted to ask, I've already asked, or we've had audience members bring up. I don't know if our audience has any more questions or comments for Rachel. If so, now would be a good time. Otherwise, I'm also, happy to hear anything else that we haven't talked about, Rachel, that you think might be interesting for us to know about the film. All right. Well,
I actually will be interested. You saw the film, about your reaction when you saw it. What did you feel about it? Because it's I created it and now it's out in the world, but it's always fun to see what was the reaction, or did it move anything, or.
I was very touched about how humble Jeff was. And even you could tell that his Judaism was coming from within him. But I really related to the part about reading the Torah and how you would handle, because when my youngest granddaughter was bat mitzvahed, I decided I would read the Torah for the first time. And I was just like in a panic. I went back and took beginning courses, and I didn't want to just memorize it. And if that had changed in any way, I think I would have fallen apart. So I thought it was so brilliant that they figured out, oh, do the beginning blessing. That won't change no matter if you go through a delay or something. And I just felt a little chill when he was reading that part, and then the blessing afterwards. I thought, what a great lesson for people, and I think his humbleness really came across in the, his strength, his talent, but also his humbleness came across in the film. It was very touching.
Yeah, I was struck, Rachel, by the way that it begins with the quote. I cannot reproduce it exactly, but the idea being, if there's one thing that people who are Jewish are not going to be, it's an astronaut. And then, of course, the rest of the film debunks that. And the idea that, the more you learn about Jewish life, Jewish individuals and groups, the more you learn that, the stereotypes are all just that. And that being Jewish is, it's not a monolithic identity. There are so many ways to be Jewish. And the other thing I would say is just, we have a lot of films in the festival over the years that I would consider to be about Jewish culture more than about Jewish religion, Judaism, right? And so it was striking to me in a good way that there was as much sort of content related to Jewish faith, right? What it means to be Jewish from a religious perspective. And I appreciated that. And I think that I'm sure many audience members did too, because it's not always something that we're seeing on screen, even at a Jewish film festival. Okay, well, I will say a very hearty thank you to Rachel for being here today with us and for making this film, which I think probably has been and will continue to be important to many people of all ages, and particularly for Jewish communities who watch it and show it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and maybe I'll see some of you on Monday.
That would be lovely.
That would be great.
Lovely. I will distribute the link.
Neal, I was just going to ask if you would send that link out to people.
Happy to do it. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, take care and have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.